So, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, depending where you are in the world. This is the next in a series of webinars that we're going to do, and today we're proudly joined by ThoughtWorks to cover putting continuous delivery into practice with Go. The session should last for roughly an hour, including Q&A, and we're going to kick it off now. So my name is Andrew Turner. I'm the VP of Marketing for MidVision. I'm joined today with my co-presenters, Ken Mugrange, who's the Global Program Manager for Go from ThoughtWorks, and Dr. Richard Betterson, who is the co-founder and CTO. The agenda for today's session, we're just going to cover some initial webinar logistics and then cover the purpose of today's session. I'll then cover a couple of slides just setting the context and scene of why continuous delivery is becoming increasingly important to organizations, and then hand over to Ken and Richard to cover really ThoughtWorks and Go and Rapid Deploy from MidVision in more detail, including a live demo. And then we're just going to close the session with a wrap-up and Q&A, and then move on from there. So just to give you some webinar logistics for today, the session is being recorded. Everybody's going to be muted, but there's an opportunity to post any questions during the session, so we can pick up that up at the end of the session. There's a GoToWebinar panel on the right-hand side of your screens that you can actually post questions into there, and we'll pick them up. So what we're going to cover today is give you a briefing on how we can put continuous delivery into practice using the tools of Go and Rapid Deploy, help you understand how you can use these capabilities to achieve your continuous delivery goals. What we're not going to have time to do, though, is go into a full deep dive of Go and Rapid Deploy. However, we could set up a separate session for you if you're of interest of that. So just to put the context of why continuous delivery is becoming increasingly important for organizations across industry sectors these days, the City AM newspaper in London published this article in June, where it was an interview with Anthony Jenkins, who's the CEO of Barclays Bank, and he was saying that he needs to invest significantly in technology and customer service to retain customers and grow the relationship, because the advent of technology firms of like PayPal, Amazon, etc., are posing serious threats to their operating model and their business model for the future. Obviously, banks and financial services companies operate in a regulated industry. So there's an interesting quote here from Paul McNulty, who's the former US Deputy Attorney General, about the compliance requirements that these organizations have to face and also the implications for non-compliance. So what we find is it's a case of balancing the elements of velocity of your organization and how you optimize your business model, but also dealing that with the regulation and compliance needs of your industry. So you've probably heard some of these topics covered related to continuous delivery, the concept of DevOps, where you get your organization, your developers, and your operations team to work more closely as one team. Continuous delivery is the practice, the process of how you deliver things, your innovations from initial developer code into production, into the hands of your customers. And application release automation tools like Rapid Deploy from MidVision are the types of capability that people use to automate things along that delivery chain to ensure you make best use of your resources and time. So in the context of this thing about releasing innovations into the hands of your customers to build that relationship, what we're seeing is that people are needing to deliver things faster, so they want to look at how they can automate elements that are carried out by the IT and technology functions today, so they can bring products to market quicker. But also they want to do that safely, so they want to actually put that land that in the hands of their customers in maybe a mobile app or it's an internet application, but also make sure that they are compliant and they can actually audit what actually has gone on as a process. But also overall, you want to control the cost of ownership. So what you want to do is look at how you focus more time on value creation, and also look at maybe the opportunities that automation provides for that. So what I'm going to do now is hand over to Ken, who's going to cover the history of ThoughtWorks as they've been doing this and working in this area in some innovative areas and creating some disruptive thinking over the last 20 years.
Yeah, thank you, Andrew. So first off, if we look at ThoughtWorks, we believe that in order to really make these kind of changes, they're fairly ambitious, and companies have to be open to disruptive thinking. So, DevOps and continuous delivery are fairly new concepts to folks, and they tend to follow organizational patterns as well. So It's a fairly strong belief that we have that goes back many years. When we look at ThoughtWorks itself, we're about a 20-year-old company, and odds are you have either used software that we've created or read books that our employees, we call ThoughtWorkers, have written. We were very, very early on in the Agile industry, actually using some of those processes before they were called Agile. I have a couple people that were signatories on the Agile Manifesto, et cetera. And really helped bring continuous integration to the market. Gosh, about 13, 14 years ago, we first started calling it continuous integration with open source tools that were created at ThoughtWorks like Cruise Control and Selenium and others. So our approach when creating software is really about continuous design and continuous delivery, getting fast feedback from people, taking ideas, test them in the minimum viable product way, show the customers as quickly as possible, find out that if you're building the right thing. And this is where continuous delivery really fits in very, very well, frankly. So in case people aren't familiar with us as a company, some of our offerings, I hate to do a menu, but just as an idea of what we do, these are the three areas that we operate, consulting, software design, and delivery, as well as tools. As Andrew mentioned, I am the program manager for Go, so that's the thing we're going to be talking about today, the logo there on the upper right. So there's some of the other services that we do offer. Okay, so a little bit more about Go. First off, why did we create it? I mentioned that we had a open source tool called Cruise Control that we created some number of years ago. There's certainly a lot of other continuous integration tools on the market that can meet some of these needs. But really what we felt is we needed a new platform that did some of the concepts that are unique to continuous delivery in a way that was different than what a continuous integration server works. All with this principle in mind, how do we get software to customers as quickly as possible? The biggest core concept of where Go is different is this concept of pipelines. If you've not read a book with the title Continuous Delivery, I highly recommend it. And it talks a lot about pipelines, but I'm just going to do a quick overview of what we mean by that here as we go forward. So what a pipeline does is, a delivery team changes some code, some infrastructure settings, what have you. They check something into a source code management system. We run some builds. We see if it works. If it doesn't work, we notify the team. They fix it. They run it again, and hopefully that time it passes. From there, we go on to potentially further stages, like automated acceptance tests, for example. These tests generally run a little bit longer, go a little bit deeper, and so forth to give even more information. From there, we might go out to other stages. If that one fails, it goes back. We do it again, it passes, and we might go out even further. Now, this is where I like to draw a difference between continuous delivery and continuous deployment. Continuous delivery gives us the ability to deliver software to our users at any time. We always keep it release ready, whereas continuous deployment would push it automatically to production every time we do a change. You can do either, but if you're doing manual, you might have a user acceptance or something like that, and then a deployment stage. Richard in a minute is going to do a demo, so I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on this, but this is what pipelines look like in Go. Individual boxes show the different stages that are involved and so forth. Now, I mentioned that we felt like we needed a new solution in order to deliver pipelines, and this is why. You can absolutely take a continuous integration server and chain together events and have it look like a pipeline the same way you do continuous integration pipelines, but there are some caveats and some gotchas in doing that. So first off, on this one, if the left-hand side here, if I do a commit and then I run an acceptance stage, all this is fully automated. This is typically fairly fast. So I get feedback, I know what's going on, no problems. And then the right-hand side, the continuous delivery portion, if you will, is typically quite a bit longer. There might be manual things in there like exploratory testing. There might be long-running automated tests like performance, etc. And so what happens, or what can happen, is if you go into, for example, user acceptance or the staging environment or something like that, and you see the software, and well, it's not exactly providing the value we hoped it did. I want to change something about this. By the time that change gets back through to where you are, frankly, it just takes too long. Plus, you're required to go through each of those steps. So, maybe you did something that shouldn't require you to go through exploratory testing, or you choose not to. You still have to go through the step in your tool. So what we felt is that we needed, the market needed a tool set, a solution that allowed really complex dependencies so that we could do as much as possible in, notice that this is also not as long left to right, even though it's the same number of pipelines. The idea here is that we have our commit stage and we have our acceptance stage, and that's all fully automated. But the yellow arrows, what here is, those are signifying a manual approval. So I can, if I choose, click one button, or somebody that wants to test the software can click one button, deploy it to an exploratory testing environment, for example, and go through and do the kind of tests that humans are good at, finding edge cases, those kinds of things. Somebody, could be the same person, could be a different person, can decide we want to do capacity testing on this particular run. And so they click that button, or UAT, or production, etc. But we need to do these things in parallel. Now, how does Go enable that? This is a screenshot that we call the value stream map inside Go. And I know there's a lot on the screen here, but frankly, that's on purpose. This is an actual pipeline that builds Go. So we have some upfront continuous integration. There's some materials that are coming out of a Yum plugin, some other plugins, some packages, acceptance tests, etc. The really big deal here, and what this is signifying, is the ability that Go has that's unique to Go to not run things until it's supposed to run things at the right time. So, for example, if I take the Young Material plugin and that's going to run, I know whether or not the Git on the far left that goes into that cruise pipeline, if that actually tests the run every time that changes. But I don't automatically package Go. I don't go further down until the right time. This is what we call fan out, fan in. We go into quite a bit more detail on the dedicated Go webinars, but I want to not spend too much time on it right here. But this is the kind of thing, this visibility, I can look at the regression test and see all the way back to the left, everything that's gone into it. This is the value that Go brings to the table. So with that, I'll ask Andrew to hand it over to Richard.
Okay, thank you very much,
yeah, thanks,
Ken, on that. I'll just handing over to Dr. Richard. Richard, if you want to show your screen.
So I'm going to share my screen now. Hopefully everybody can see my screen.
Not quite yet. There we go.
So first of all, I'm going to just go through a little bit more of the presentation before we come on demo. So what I want to do first of all is go through really, well, what is Rapid Deploy, okay? So Rapid Deploy is a tool that's focused really on deployment automation and application release automation. So that consists of three main things. It's provisioning environments. So today we're going to look at provisioning WebSphere environments. So that's really deploying the binaries, creating the cells, creating node agents, etc., deployment managers. Then deploying configuration. So that would be things like deploying clusters, virtual hosts, database, data sources, URL providers, etc. And finally, release management, where we're actually using Go to deploy the enterprise application to the target environment. Now, we can use Rapid Deploy to deploy just the enterprise application, but today we're going to show it deploying the enterprise application and all of the necessary configuration to build that environment. So Rapid Deploy really has a tool set and product integration for the whole end-to-end life cycle of the management of this EAR file that we're looking at today, or any artifact that we want to deploy. So we have the ability to add SCM plugins to the tool, so we can add, for example, today we're going to be using Subversion, but we could be using Git or ClearCase or a flat file system. We have integration with artifact repositories. Today we're going to just use a flat file system in Rapid Deploy, but it could be Nexus, Artifactory, or Maven. We have build integration, so you can integrate with tools such as Cruise Control, or Jenkins, or Anthill Pro, or Rational Team Concert. And we have reporting engines, so we can integrate with a number of different reporting tools. And of course, we have enterprise products that we integrate with. Today, we're going to be looking at WebSphere, but we'll see a few more in the slides later on. So, and Rapid Deploy really consists of inbound and outbound APIs. We have, obviously, a web UI that you can log on to, and we'll be using that extensively today, but obviously, we won't be using all the functionality. This really isn't a deep dive. It's just sort of a quick overview. We have a JMX interface, so you can integrate Rapid Deploy with your scripts, and we have a web services interface, so you can make direct web services calls, or, as we're going to be doing today, we have 3 Go plugins that utilize the web service interface to call into Rapid Deploy. So really, the strength of Rapid Deploy is its ability to manage and deploy to complex heterogeneous enterprise environments. So, for example, today we could deploy to an environment that had an IBM HTTP server at the front end, WebSphere network deployment in the middle, maybe some messaging engines, so WebSphere MQ, WebSphere message broker perhaps, an Oracle database at the back end, and we can stand all of that up in one sort of deployment of that end-to-end environment, or we can deploy just parts of that environment. Okay, and Rapid Deploy is built on Java. It's built on Java 1.6 at the moment, and it has a plugin-based framework that is very easy for end users to extend. So we ourselves are always adding plugins, but users can write their own plugins, simple Java framework for writing plugins, and they can also write tasks that are used in the task flows in our orchestration, which we'll also talk about later. So why is Rapid Deploy important to continuous delivery? Well, really, it's the breadth and depth of the deployment capability we have in the middleware space, particularly, and databases and messaging. So you can see here in the first column in middleware, today we're going to be looking at WebSphere application server. We have a deep ability in that space, but also WebLogic, JBoss, etc. Also databases here, messaging engines. We also have some integrations with various ISVs. So we have a Siebel plugin, for example, that you can use. And these are all pre-written and out of the box. And as I said before, we can orchestrate to complex end-to-end environments. Okay, so today, how is the Rapid Deploy and Go plugins going to work together? Okay, so we have 3 plugins for Go, effectively. We have one that enables us to connect to the Rapid Deploy repository where we are storing the Rapid Deploy artifacts. We have another one to create a package, and this is called at the appropriate moment. And what it does is Go will copy over the artifact that's just been built over to Rapid Deploy. Rapid Deploy will package that into a package and store it in an artifact repository. And we can deploy a package to a target environment via SSH or a remote agent, and we'll look at that later. It's very simple to configure that in Go. You just need a project name, target environment name, and then Rapid Deploy will do the rest. Okay, so looking at pipelines, today what we're going to do is we're going to deploy to a development environment, a test environment, and we're going to do a manual approval into a production environment. Okay, so it's going to automatically go from development into test. After running some tests, and it will deploy to test, there'll be a manual approval, and it will go into production. Okay, and we can see that with the different pipelines that we'll have. So we're going to have 5 pipelines, one of which will do the build. There'll be 3 pipelines to do the deployment, one to do some functional testing, and then one to finally do the live deployment, which is manual. Okay, so let's go ahead and do the demo part 1. It's in 2 phases because it does take a while to run some of these things. So first of all, let's have a look inside Go. Let's go onto the admin panel, and let's have a look at the plugins that we've got. So here we've got 3 Rapid Deploy plugins that I spoke about a moment ago. We've got the job task plugin to run the job. We've got the package repository plugin, which enables us to connect to the repository. And we've got the package task plugin that will be called probably once in any pipeline or any flow that we have to actually create the package that's injected into the rest of the flow. And look at the package repositories. We'll see that we've got 1 Rapid Deploy repository here. It's using a type Rapid Deploy repo. And here we just enter the URL of our rapid deploy server. There's an authentication token we need to add. And for each project that we might want to use through Go, we give the project name. And we can always test the connection. And that's fine. Okay, so now let's just have a quick look at the build pipeline. And then what I'm going to do after we've looked at this pipeline is I'm going to actually kick off the change in SCM that is going to make all this work, because it takes a while to actually go through. So first of all, if we look in here, we'll see that we're using a MidVision SCM repository, which is a subversion repository. It's a JPET store application, and I'm just going to make a very quick change to that. That's going to kick off a Maven build. So we're just doing a standard type Maven build. Then we're going to SCP the artifact from the Go server to the rapid deploy server, to the correct directory. And then we're going to run that package. So this is a specific rapid deploy plugin, which is going to do the packaging. And here all we need to specify is the URL again, the authentication token. These are the same things we had in the previous one I showed you, and the project name. That's all we need to specify. Okay, so if I now go into Eclipse, here I am on my Eclipse workspace. I'm just going to compare this to see what I need to pull out. So at the moment, what we've got running in our production environment is a horrible yellow background color to our app. And I'm just going to change this to a nice gray color. So I'm going to check that in. Just going to commit that. So, okay, change the background color from yellow to gray. We'll be able to see that comment shortly. So that's now checked in. If we go back and look at our JPET store demo, this is the color that we're currently running in our production environment. Okay, a horrible yellow color. In our development and test environments, what I've actually done is I've deleted those environments entirely. So you can see that there is now nothing running in those environments. If we go and look in the WebSphere application server, I'm just going to refresh this. We will see that we have no WebSphere application server, we have no cluster, we have no applications. Now we have one application. This is a different one. You'll see the actual application later. Now the cell is here, and this won't be created today because that takes far too long. You know, the IBM process to create a cell is at least 40 minutes, and so I can't really show you that today, but we will show everything else. So if we also look in the test server here, we will see the same thing. I'm just going to, again, refresh. We'll see there's no application server, no cluster, and no application. So this is clear why we can't actually see those demo apps. Okay, so we've seen our WebSphere environments. We can see here the build app is starting to run. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to come back out of here and go back and explain a little bit more about rapid deploy before coming back to the demo again. Okay, so just a quick overview of what we've done before. We've had a quick look at the Go and rapid deploy framework servers and the WebSphere environments. We've had a quick look at the pipeline, but we're going to go through this in a lot more detail. And crucially, what we've done is changed an application file and committed it to SCM and seen that get kicked off in the CD process. Okay, so now I want to just quickly go through some key concepts of rapid deploy before going back into the demo, and we can see how that's progressing. So the first thing to note is the orchestration project. So the project is the fundamental part of rapid deploy, and this really represents a set of environment agnostic steps that will be run in every target environment for this project. Okay, and those steps you can choose from a palette of tasks to create those steps. And there are around 300 odd tasks, of which only one is a WebSphere deployment task. And we'll see just 4 or 5 tasks being used in the deployments that we're doing. We then have definitions of target servers, and these are what we're actually going to connect to from the rapid deploy server to actually do the deployment. So today we've got 3 target environments, 3 WebSphere cells. They're on 3 different servers. So we've got 3 servers defined in rapid deploy to connect to those. You can use either an agent or an agentless transport. So the agent is a Java plugin that will actually run an agent on the target server, and agentless is using SSH. And today, because our servers are running in the cloud in AWS, we're going to use agentless and we're using SSH. Then we have the target environment. Target environment is what is the definition of the target and what's different about that target from any other target, okay? And it might be a queue manager, an application server, a data-powered device, with all the environment-specific configuration that that needs. And what we do is we take the orchestration files and we take that target and we put it into a deployment package, and it's a build once, deploy anywhere package that contains the artifacts to deploy and the configuration. So a project, what is a project? It contains an XML file which defines that orchestration. Although you can edit it through rapid deploy, ultimately under the covers it's an XML file. And that contains a set of tasks, as we've discussed. We also have a log4j file which determines the logging level that will be used on the target environments. And then we have a set of project environment-specific files. And these files might be flat files, XML files, text files, properties files that define that target environment. But there will always be a dictionary file which defines the differences between this environment and any other environment. And we'll go into that in a bit more detail in a moment. And then we can have a set of external resources that this talks to, okay? So an external resource might be a URL library, a database library, a file, might be an EAR file. Today it's going to be an EAR file, or a URL that points at a file. I'm not going to go into that in too much detail today. And the project files are all stored and backed up in an SCM repository, okay? And they're then compressed, as I've already said, into a deployment package, and the deployment packages are stored in an artifact repository. So, how is a project packaged? We've got the XML, the log files, the config files, and external resources, and they go into a package. And we can see in this first case, we've got files for environment config A and environment config B. And they go into package version 1. And that can be deployed to environment A and B. Now we add environment definition C at the bottom here. Now, next time we build that, that package can be deployed to environments A, B, and C. And maybe to any changes might be added as well to environments A and B. So package version 1 deployed to environment A and environment B, and package version C can't be deployed by that. Environment C cannot be deployed by that. But package version 2 can deploy to A and B and to C, and it deploys the original files to A and B, or any changes to those files, and the new files to C. Okay, so with that in mind, we can now go back to the demo. Just going to refresh this. So we can see that the build app has now succeeded. So we can go and have a look at that and see what it did. So that build was successful, and we can see the logging here. Okay. So then it's gone on to the dev provision WAS automatically. So that is now running a deployment in WebSphere. So if we go and have a look at that dev provision WAS, let's go into rapid deploy now. And we should be able to go to executing jobs. And we'll see this job running. Okay. And we see the tasks that are being executed. And we can see some real-time logging happening. So we're currently running a WebSphere 8.5 deployment task. And we can see that that's actually going through. Okay. So let's just go back into the pipeline and have a look in here. So what we're running here is we're running 3 different stages in here. We're running a provision, which is going to be skipped because the target already exists. Then we're running a deploy app. And we can see here that we're running a rapid deploy job. And this job, again, is putting in the rapid deploy server, again, putting in the authentication token. We give the project name, and we give the target environment name. And if we see here, it's cbdev01 dev cluster01 jpet store. Now, if we go back into rapid deploy, and we'll leave that running, we'll go into the project. Okay, so let's go and have a look at the ThoughtWorks project. This is the one we've been configuring all the way through. So if we look at the environments that are defined in here, and we'll go into these in a bit more detail in a moment, we can see we've got CB Dev 01, Dev, Cluster 01, JPET Store. So all we have to do in Go is literally put a dot in between each of those environments and concatenate it together, and that gives us the environment that we need to deploy. The package repository name that we saw in the admin, we're specifying that here, and here we specify the package name as pet store latest. So this will pick up the latest package and deploy that through the environments. Okay, and if we go and look in Rapid Deploy, we can see the packages, and we can see an 009 package, and if we just have a quick look at that, that should have just been created a few moments ago. So that was created on Wednesday, 16th of July at 12:28 Eastern Daylight Time, which is, yeah, sort of 7 minutes ago or something. So, so that's the latest package that we're running. Okay, so let's go back into Go, and let's have a look at the test provision WAS. Whoops, sorry. And to go into configuration. So again, we have the same three stages that we're running, but this time we'll see that this job is talking to the test instance. And in Rapid Deploy, we can see that defined. Here as the test instance here. Okay, and again we're saying pet store latest. What I should point out here on the main page is that we're setting automatic pipeline scheduling. So this job has kicked off automatically from the previous job. But if we go back now to the pipelines and go to the production environment, we'll see the difference here that this has not got automatic pipeline scheduling. And so this will wait for us to actually kick off the job manually. And again, we've got the deploy app, got the run rapid deploy job, and again, we've just got the prod environment. Okay. Okay, and that sort of more or less covers it in this environment. So now we can have a look back in rapid deploy. We'll have a look at the executing jobs, and that job is now completed. So we now go into the WebSphere console, and I'll just refresh this console. This is the development console. And we now go into WebSphere application servers. We can see that now we have a WebSphere application server that's running when there was none before. And we can see we have a cluster running. And we can see that we have a WebSphere Enterprise application running. So hopefully, if I click on this link now, we will see that reload. Oh, well, we don't. Typical. Oops, wrong one. That was the test environment. There we go. So you can see the difference now between the demo, the dev environment and the production environment, which is this has still got the yellow. This one has now got the nice grey. And the test environment, obviously, we deleted it, so it's not yet there. So we're now deploying to the test environment. That's gone automatically through. So it ran our smoke test stage. That passed. So it passed all the tests that we needed to go from dev to test. So we're now actually doing a test deployment. Okay, so if we go back into Rapid Deploy, I just want to go through that project a little bit more, in a bit more detail, whilst that's all running. So firstly, in the project, we've got the first page. This page really just tells us the name of the project, a little bit of information. It tells us where we're going to write the log files for this project and who the owner is, and whether we actually can do any deployments from this project or not. And then this is the critical page. We spoke about the orchestration, and this is what really the project's about. This is the environment neutral steps that this project will run in each environment. So it's always going to run an initialization task, and that basically takes that super archive, that zip file, containing all of our configuration and the JPET store here, whatever else we might have in there, and unzips it somewhere on the target server. Okay? That's defined in the server definition, which we'll look at later. In this case, what we're then doing is we're expanding that EAR file. okay? And then we're going to do a search and replace inside that EAR file, and we're going to do this on an environment-specific value. So in any HTML file we find, we're going to see welcome to JPetStore, and we're going to replace that with welcome to JPetStore 6, followed by this @app name @app. Now, I mentioned earlier the idea of a data dictionary. The data dictionary is the thing that says what's different in this environment between other environments. So the app name will be different in each environment. If I just quickly go back to that JPetStore demo live, dev, you can see here it says JPetStore EAR dev, and that's an environment-specific value that we have changed. Okay, go back on here and go to the JPetStore prod. This is the entry point. It says JPetStore EAR prod. So you can see the difference that's been searched and replaced on that deployment. And then we EAR the EAR file back up, we shut down the cluster, and then we do the WebSphere deployment. Now in here we just specify very simple values, install app, install JDBC, etc. Now these are very high level values that you can set, but there are hundreds of configuration items that you can set, and I will show you those in a moment on a different page. We also have a settings panel here. We can say who gets emails once this deployment's completed or failed. We can specify a working directory. So for example, when it does that EAR file expand and collapse, that would go into the working directory. We also select the log level. Here we can select the SCM repository that we're using from a drop list. Here we can select the artifact repository that we're using. We're using a local file system, but we could choose from whatever plugins we've got installed. We could choose a build plugin. I don't have a build plugin specified. The product plugin is of course set to WebSphere 8. Then we've got the environments here, which we'll look at again in a moment. But first, let's just say that we are starting this project from scratch and we want to create a new WebSphere project, and we don't really know very much about WebSphere. Okay, so we create a new environment. And we can specify the target server display name, or we can specify a new one. And then in that environment, we can choose an existing environment, or we can specify a new one. Same for instance. So in this case, that would be a cluster. And then we can give it an app name. Now, I'm not going to save this, so I'm just going to put something random in there. And then here we can configure a template. So because we've got the WebSphere 8 plugin installed, we see some WebSphere 8 templates. We have a standard template here. And this allows us very simply to configure our target WebSphere environment. Now, we can come back and edit this later. We can manually add things to it if we want to. But this will create all the things we might need. So we can enable and disable various things for this environment. And this will enable us to set up a basic cell with a cluster in it, etc. Okay, and all of these values here will become data dictionary items that we mentioned before. So that when we want to clone this environment to another environment, all we have to do is change the data dictionary items to create those environments. So I'm not actually going to do that. I'm going to come out of here. I'm just going to have a quick look and see how that pipeline's doing. Okay, so it's still deploying the provision WAS. It does take a while, I'm afraid, this. So oh, that one's passed. So let's just leave that for a little longer. Okay, so I've got 3 environments that I created, but if I wanted to create a new one from these environments, all I would have to do is clone this environment. I just choose a different application name, for example, or a different name anywhere. I can put it in the same cell or a different cell, whatever I want to do. And I can choose that I'm using the same project. And then all I have to do is change one of these data dictionary items, or more than one. Okay? Now, as you can see here, one of them is app name, JPetStore EAR test, and this is the one that we've actually changed to make it different between environments. Okay, but I could change, heap sizes, whatever else I wanted to change. Okay, and then I can go to finish and I can create this. But actually, I'm not going to create that. So what that results in, either on the first time or when I clone an environment, is I have these environments. So I'm going to go and have a look at one of these environments. Let's look at CBDev01. And here there's a number of things that we can look at. Let's have a quick look at the data dictionary. Okay, so I'm going to just extend this to 100 items and sort this. Okay, so here we can see the app name, JPET Story Dev, it's different test, production, and all of the things we can change. Now these can be changed, added to whatever I want to do. And if I do that, they can be stored as encrypted or not, as password or not. We can specify different escape characters, anything we want to do. We can also see all of the target resources on the target server. So here we can see the current ear file that's sitting in there, being copied in. We didn't have to copy it into this location, we have done for this test. The log4j.properties, the actual orchestration file that we created that is backing the piece back there, and all of the configuration files. And these are the actual PY files. You don't need to edit these because these have all got the data dictionary, but you can when you know what you're doing, and so that you can specify anything you want to do in WebSphere, you can do through these files. Okay, let's go back. I'm just going to go and check that pipeline again, see how we're doing. Okay, so that's completed. So what we're going to do now is actually, firstly, let's have a look in the test environment and refresh that. Okay, so that looks like we want it to look. We're happy to promote that to production. We can see it's done the search and replace JPET Story test. So I'm now going to promote that to our production environment. Okay, that's going to kick off a job to go into the production environment. And here we can actually look at the value stream map that Ken went through before to see our SCM change, going through our build app, our artifact or material that's being deployed to our dev environment, then through our test environment, then the functional test, and now it's actually deploying into production. So we can see that very nicely through there. Okay, let's just have a quick look at our test environment that we know has just been configured. So we know that that WebSphere application server is now going to be there. Our workspace has been auto-refreshed. We can see that's there. You can see that the cluster is there. So we know that that's all been nicely provisioned. Okay, so now let's quickly go back into Rapid Deploy. I know I'm jumping around a bit here, but in order to be able to see everything within the time, I kind of need to do that. Okay, so now let's go and have a look at the packages. So we know we've got these two packages, 8 and 9. What I'm actually going to do now is going to compare those with each other to see what we actually changed in this deployment. Okay. So we have some plugins to enable us to do package comparison. One of them is Beyond Compare. We have a plugin for Beyond Compare 2 and 3. We will shortly have one coming out for the Mac. At the moment, there's only one for Windows. Beyond Compare has only just been supported on the Mac, so we're just producing that. Just take a moment or two to download. There we go. So I'm going to change the comparison parameters to compare on size and checksum. So we can see that the manifest in our super archive has been changed from 8 to 9. And it was built, this one was built at 1037 and this 1228, so I ran a test earlier today. And if we go inside the ear file, we can see that what I actually changed, and the only thing I changed, was that background color from that horrible yellow color to this nice gray color. Okay. And what I could also do is look at the config. I can compare config between environments, for example, or if I'd have changed any config, I would have seen what config had changed between those deployments as well, so I'd know what config was expected to be changed. But actually, we're not changing any of the config. We're just rebuilding the cluster from scratch. Okay. So what we also need to look at is groups. So Rapid Deploy has fine-grained access control. So there are a number of roles within Rapid Deploy, administrator roles, various other roles. Users and groups can be assigned to roles, and projects can be assigned to roles. So a user will have the defined access on a particular project that those roles grant them. And we can support LDAP, etc. Through the tool. Okay, and the other thing we need to look at, I mentioned before, with the actual target environments. Let's go and have a look at the servers. We mentioned these 3 servers that we're deploying to. Now, these are just logical names. So I'm going to go and have a look at one of those servers. It's got some general information about the OS type. This is the remote build store, so this is where everything gets copied to on the target. Now, I obviously would not normally use temp in a production type environment. You'd have some defined space that you copied those artifacts to. We are allowing deployments to this server, but we can switch it off if we want to. This is the host name, which is obviously in Amazon. Now, the transport we're using is SSH. On port 22, we've got a timeout. We're using the EC2 user. We're using a PEM file, so we're using an SSH key. We could have a passphrase or whatever. And we're using sudo. So although we're doing EC2 user, we're actually sudoing to root to run the command. You probably wouldn't normally run as root your WebSphere environment. You might, but you can choose what you want to do. So this is running all the commands on the target as root. We can also add environment variables here. Every time we do a run, will be set in the shell that is run. Now, we could have chosen to use the remote agent, and that would have been running then on the target server on port 20,000. It supports multicasting, a number of different transport settings, and we can set secure keys up. Rapid Deploy can control all of that for you. So Rapid Deploy will use mutual auth and create keys on both sides if necessary, or you can manage that yourself. It's up to you. And we also have cloud integration. So this is using cloud, so we can see all of the different instances that we've got set up in this instance. We could use the different regions. This is all pulled dynamically from AWS. So we can start and stop instances. We can synchronize this server with the instance to any changes that have been made. So, and all the things you might expect to be able to do through Amazon can be done in this environment. Okay, so I'm conscious we're short of time now. So I'm just going to go back and see how this is doing. So it's still doing the deployment to the WebSphere environment. Let's see how it's getting on. So yes, it is still running. So it's doing the WebSphere deployment task. How far has it got in that task? Okay, so it's just starting the cluster. It's nearly finished. So in Go, I was just going to suggest that we have a quick. We're going to see this finish. Maybe we will, maybe we won't. Let's see if that server is running. It is running. Excellent. So that has now deployed to production. We see that change, and I think we're quite happy that we've done an end-to-end deployment in an hour. We've made a change and deployed that to 3 WebSphere environments. And in 2 of those cases, in the development and the test environment, we actually completely built out the clusters, the application servers, the virtual hosts, and everything that end-to-end environment used. So with that, I will hand back control to.
No, Andrew, it's Andrew here. If you just run the slides from your session, it's fine.
Yeah, I'll run the slides from here. Okay, Andrew. So do you just want to carry on from here?
Yeah, that's fine. Okay. Yeah, so I think the next session, the next part of the section was going to run some Q&A. I'm just checking the questions. Obviously, we had a bit of a hiccup at the beginning of the session with the slides. There's no new questions have come through, but obviously at the end of the session, we'll let you know how you can contact either Ken and the team from ThoughtWorks or ourselves if you want any follow-up information that you want to be shared. So I don't think we've got anything else that's currently been posted. No, I think we're okay. So just to finish off, we recently got some recognition from Gartner. This is MidVision. Gartner thinks we're cool. So in this hot market that we operate in at the moment, we're getting some good recognition. This is back in April. We got the Cool Vendor for DevOps as recognition of the work that Richard and the rest of the development team have done over the last 5-6 years of building out Rapid Deploy as a platform. The interesting thing is that what they recognized was that actually we can do something that's quite unique. We can not only provision the environments that actually are required, i.e. the examples that Rich went through a bit earlier, but also the actual application code itself, and obviously combined now with very, very compelling visualization capability like you've got from ThoughtWorks Go, you do actually have a very, very good capability to use in your continuous delivery and DevOps types of capability projects. What we have done, obviously, is we've also deployed this across industry sectors. So we originally were born in the bank. So the whole context of regulation, risk, and compliance is very well understood. And this platform is currently operating in a number of banks and insurance companies globally, besides also healthcare companies, energy companies, life sciences companies, and even the UK government use it as well. So we believe we've got quite an interesting proposition. It's obviously allows you to cross a core platform that is obviously built in Java, but also allows you to integrate with the open source and commercial tool chains that you do have out there. So just to finish off, we obviously have shared this session today with ThoughtWorks. We do thank the team from ThoughtWorks, Ken, Capel, and the rest of the team for going through this work in the last number of weeks. I think we've done a great demonstration from Rich on showing how this thing could work together. We hope that was interesting for yourselves who've attended today's session. If you've got any follow-up particular questions, then there is a community site for Go, which is go.cd, and obviously for professional support and general elements of what they offer as an organization, obviously you can contact ThoughtWorks directly. On the rapid deploy side, we do have a community edition where we actually offer that for free up to 5 nodes. And actually, if you want any more information from a sales support point of view, obviously contact us through our website. So all it really leaves me to do is thanks to Ken and Richard and the rest of the team from both companies for doing such great work in the last number of weeks to get this together. And we hope to speak to you soon. Thanks very much for your time and have a great day. Thanks. Bye-bye.